So now Bismillah Rahman Rahim, and now we are going to move to the second part of this chapter, which is actually very small, but it is very critical concept. So now we know the sinus node is actually the normal pacemaker of the heart. So what is the main process and why do we call it the normal pacemaker? Let me explain this through a diagram. So this is not a cockroach or something. This is actually your SA node, your AV node, your bundle of His, and this is a conceptual diagram to explain everything to you. So SA node is known as the pacemaker of the heart because its excitation is very fast. Like it beats for about 70 to 80 times per minute. Whereas for AV node, it beats for about 40 to 60 times per minute. Or it will cause the heart to beat for about 40 to 60 times per minute. Whereas the bundle of His, it will cause the heart beating to about 15 to 40 times per minute. So which is the fastest? 70 to 80. One, that is the SA node. So it will overdrive all of these, and before any of these, the two can take over, this main macho man or this big man, this or big women, or we can call it. So this big thing, the SA node, is actually the pacemaker because it has the fastest conduction of all, right? So in this whole paragraph, Guyton, as its custom is that they have explained it, so that they are saying that the SA node will beat about 70 to 80 times per minute, AV node 40 to 60, and Purkinje 15 to 40. I explained it all process to you. So now, why is only the SA node possible? Because the discharge rate of the SA node, which is 70 to 80 times per minute, is considerably the fastest natural self-excitatory discharge rate of either the AV node or the Purkinje fibers. Now each time the SA node discharges its impulses, it is conducted to AV node and Purkinje fibers. However, the SA node discharges again before the AV node self-excitation begins. So actually it's the fastest, its re-excitation is faster as compared to the others, so it is more important. What happens sometimes? Now there is whole atria and then ventricles surrounding this. Sometimes due to some abnormality, part of the muscle of atrial muscle, it becomes more excitable as compared to the SA node, as a result of which it will then overdrive the SA node, as a result of which, since this pacemaker is lying outside this whole conductive pathway, so it will be known as a ectopic pacemaker, right? Extra or lying outside of the natural pathway is the ectopic pacemaker, right? So ectopic pacemaker or abnormal pacemaker, some other part of the heart develops a rhythmical discharge. Oh my god, where is the rhythmical discharge rate that is more rapid than the sinus node, as a result of which the development sometimes occur in the AV node or in the Purkinje fiber or in the atrial muscle fiber, as a result of which what will happen? A pacemaker elsewhere than the sinus node will be called the ectopic pacemaker. It will produce an abnormal sequence of contraction of different parts of the heart and will cause weakening of the heart and ineffective pumping of the heart. Now, another cause of the shift of pacemaker is sometimes the blockage of the transmission of the cardiac impulse. Now, what happens is, moving back to this diagram, that sometimes from the SA node to the AV node, the impulses are not reaching, as a result of which what will happen? The ventricles will now start beating on the rhythm of AV node because SA node is not there to discharge it, so AV node will take over the action. Or sometimes the bundle of His will not work, as a result this region, the above portion of the Purkinje fibers, will start controlling the contraction 15 to 40 times per minute, and this will further decrease the heart pumping, right? So what happens sometimes when the AV node is not working, in such a situation when there is blockage and the AV node is not even working, so what happens? The shifting from the AV node to this bundle of His or above portion of the Purkinje fibers, it takes some time, and in this time the heart is not beating, and since the heart is not beating, body is not receiving blood. When the body is not receiving the blood, what will happen? The person will go in a state of unconsciousness or a shock, which will be called the Stokes-Adams syndrome. This episode of the changing from from the AV node to this a little bit slower setup will cause this Stokes-Adams syndrome, or overdrive suppression syndrome, because of this overdriving of the above portion of the Purkinje fiber, because it is being overdriven, so it needs a little bit of time to come back into action, and this time of coming back into action will actually put the person to unconsciousness. This is very bad. Okay, so the whole episodes of unconsciousness for 5 to 20 seconds before the changing from the AV node takes place to the above portion of the Purkinje fiber, it is known as the Stokes-Adams syndrome. It is also known as periodic fainting spells, and its treatment is epinephrine. It's very important. You need to remember this. Now, what is the role of Purkinje fibers? As you know, the rapid conduction of the Purkinje system permits the cardiac muscles or impulse to arrive at almost all portions of the ventricles within a narrow span of time. From the time it reaches the above portion, from the AV node to bundle of His to the tips of the Purkinje fiber, it only takes 0.03 seconds, right? This timing causes all the portion of the ventricle muscles in both the ventricles to begin contracting at almost the same time, and then continue this contraction for 0.3 seconds. The effective pumping by the two ventricular chambers requires a synchronous type of contraction. If the cardiac contraction is not synchronous, the pumping effect will be depressed. It will be a very big drawback. Indeed, in some type of cardiac dysfunction, slow transmission might occur, and this slow transmission will decrease the pumping effectiveness of the heart to about 20 to 30%. Now, because this efficiency is decreased, so we have to come to a solution, and this solution is implantable resynchronization devices, which are actually the pacemakers, which will give your heart a case of shock. So if your heart actually goes like it stops beating due to the Stokes-Adams syndrome, so what will happen, that you will have an ectopic implantable cardiothoracic pacemaker, which will be there. It will give your heart a shock. It will like alter the heart chemistry, and as a result, external outflow or external current passageway will cause your heart to start its functioning, and will not actually put the person into a period of unconsciousness, right? Now we come towards this very important thing, the sympathetic nerves and the parasympathetic nerves. You will come across this a lot of times in second year as well, and in first year as well. So what is the sympathetic and parasympathetic portion? They are actually the parts of the autonomic system. Autonomic, that works on its own. The one is the sympathetic one, other is the parasympathetic one. Sympathetic is the fight and flight reaction, whereas parasympathetic is the rest or digest reaction. Okay, and why is this important for your heart? Now I will explain each and everything to you. The parasympathetic or the rest or digest vagal fibers are there, which will slow the cardiac rhythm and conduction. So what happens is that suppose you're in a period of relaxation. So do you need your heart to pump rapidly? No, you do not need your heart to pump rapidly. You need your heart to pump very relaxed amount of blood, or normal amount of blood. So this stimulation of the parasympathetic fibers is by the vagus nerve, the 10th cranial nerve. Now acetylcholine will be released at the vagal endings. The neurotransmitter, the acetylcholine, what will it do? It will have two effects. Firstly, it will decrease the rate of sinus nodal discharge. Secondly, it will decrease the excitability of AV junctional fibers between atrial musculature and AV node. So it will decrease two things. One is the SA node and one is the internodal pathway. So it will decrease the SA node and the internodal pathway, as a result of which there will be a little bit slowing or weak to moderate beating of your heart. Now, weak to moderate vagal stimulation slows the rate of heart pumping to as little as one half of the normal. Now, what are they saying? That if there is a large amount of acetylcholine produced, it will be so large that it will sometimes cause your ventricles to stop beating for like 5 to 20 seconds. And this will be like very bad, right? Whenever the heart will decrease this much and it will stop beating, what will happen? There will be a period of unconsciousness, right? In such a situation, then the AV node, since the SA node is not working, then the next will be AV node, and the AV node will take over. And this situation of the escaping from the SA node and ventricles having their movement being controlled by the AV node is known as the ventricular escape. You escaped from the SA node, now you're beating under the control of AV node, and this whole process is known as the ventricular escape. Now the beating of the ventricles will be a little bit less. From 70 to 80, which was the normal beat by the SA node, it will go very less. It will go to like 40 to 60 beats per minute, which will be under the contraction of AV node. Or if it goes to the AV bundle, it will become 15 to 40. Now I told you the vagal nerve is 10th cranial nerve. It is the parasympathetic nerve. It releases acetylcholine. But what is the mechanism of this whole action thing? The acetylcholine released at the vagal nerve ending, it greatly increases the permeability of fiber membrane to potassium ions. Now what do the potassium ions do? Which allow leakage of the potassium ions out of the conductive fiber. Whenever the potassium channels are open, they will push the potassium out of your cycle or your membrane. As a result of which, you will have hyperpolarization. And this hyperpolarization makes the threshold level a little bit higher. It will move the muscles to a place or potential which is more negative. And this potential which is more negative means more time will be taken to move this potential, more negative potential, to the positive side, and hence the threshold has been increased, and hence it is difficult to move your muscles back to the excitatory stage. So this is how they do it. They increase the threshold by opening of the potassium channels. And this increasing of the threshold is very important action of the vagal stimulation. They're saying a moderate decrease delays the conduction of impulse, but a severe decrease will block the conduction entirely, right? And now I told you there was another thing which was the sympathetic stimulation. Now the other thing was the parasympathetic one. The parasympathetic, that SA node was stopped from its action, like it was doing its action below the average, then internodal pathway was caused to slow down. But now what will it do? The sympathetic or the fight or flight response, that is due to the action of the sympathetic nerves, will cause an increase in the SA node discharge, increase in the conduction from the SA node to the AV node, and increased force of contraction of your heart. So this is the sympathetic one. And due to sympathetic excitation, if the sympathetic excitation goes out of hand, it will lead to tachycardia or increased heart rate. Now they are saying that in the parasympathetic one, we saw that there was vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve was releasing acetylcholine, and the acetylcholine was increasing the permeability of the potassium channels, and the potassium was being pumped out, the threshold was being increased. But in the sympathetic effect, what will happen? Norepinephrine will be produced. The norepinephrine will go to the beta-1 adrenergic receptors, and the beta-1 adrenergic receptors, what do they do? This is not clear, but they seem to increase the permeability of sodium and calcium ions. And whenever sodium and calcium ions are they are the positive ones, no? So they will allow the inward movement of the positive ions. And when the inward movement of positive ions will take place, what will happen? That the membrane potential will move towards positive side. The threshold will be decreased. Excitation will become increased. And hence, SA node will be excited more, internodal pathway will be conducting more, heart will be beating more, right? Due to the increased sodium and potassium, calcium permeability, it makes it easier for the action potential to excite each succeeding portion of the conducting fiber. The increase in permeability to calcium ion is least partially responsible for increasing contractile strength of the cardiac muscle fiber. Now, why do the contractile strength is increased? Because the contractile apparatus, the actin, myosin filaments, they will start moving, right? And they work on the calcium ions. This is because the calcium ion play a powerful role in exciting the contractile process of the myofibrils, the actin and myosin, hence increasing the heart rate. After everything, I give you a brief overview. So the brief overview is, this is the parasympathetic one. It has vagus nerve. Vagus nerve will produce this neurotransmitter acetylcholine. This neurotransmitter acetylcholine will go in the potassium channels. It will cause opening of the potassium channels. The opening of the potassium channels will decrease the membrane potential from the positive to negative side. It will increase the threshold and make them less excitable. Moving toward the sympathetic nerve. The sympathetic nerve will release this neurotransmitter epinephrine. The epinephrine will go to the beta-1 adrenergic receptors, and then the beta-1 adrenergic receptors will stimulate sodium and calcium ions. They will allow the influx of the positive ions. The influx will cause the movement from the negative side to the positive side. This positivity will decrease the threshold. Decreasing the threshold means becoming more excitable. And this whole two portions that I made, they are actually the part of this one process. This was the positive part due to the sodium and calcium channels, and this was the negative part. I hope you understood each and everything. I made it crystal clear from my side. If you have any queries, please ask me them in the comment box, and if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel because I will be uploading a complete course of the CVS and it will be very clear to you. Thank you very much till then.